Hey everyone, Matt Rawl here. Thanks for joining me for the final days, a Lenten journey through the Gospels. And we're going to start way back in the beginning of this project. It really began in high school. Now, I had grown up in the church. I was baptized in the church. I went to church almost every Sunday, but I wasn't quite public with my faith until high school. Now, freshman and sophomore year, my friends and I gathered at the Flagpole in front of the school on Wednesday mornings to pray. And of course, our prayers were simple, but they were sincere. We prayed for good test grades. We prayed that we might win the game this weekend. We prayed about our relationships. But it felt good to belong. It felt good to be a part of a community that was praying for each other. And on Wednesday mornings, I walked a little taller, knowing that I bent the ear of the Almighty for all of my concerns. But things changed going into my junior year. Into my junior year, I joined Key Club, which is part of Kiwanis International, which is a service organization. And the problem was their meetings were also on Wednesday mornings. And my friends saw that I wasn't meeting with them at the Flagpole anymore, and they started praying for me. But not in a cool, like, let's support Matt Rawl kind of a thing in terms of going out and being a part of the community and serving with Kiwanis. They were praying for my salvation. They saw that because I wasn't with them, my salvation was in doubt. I got angry. I wasn't convicted. I was mad. So I devoted myself to a very vengeful and violent way of repaying them. I started reading the Bible for myself. So it was Holy Week of my junior year, and I was reading through the Gospel of Mark because it was the shortest one. And I got to this episode where Jesus was standing before Caiaphas, and Caiaphas asked him, "I charge you under oath, are you the Messiah, the Son of God?" And Jesus says, "Yes, I am. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of God and coming in the clouds." And that was definitive for me. How else do you understand? Yes, I am. I knew enough to know that Matthew, Mark, and Luke were relatively similar. They were the synoptic gospels. I didn't use that language at the time, but I knew that they were kind of in sync with each other. So I looked up the same passage in the Gospel of Matthew, and there it was, Caiaphas and Jesus. Caiaphas asked Jesus, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of God?" And in Matthew's Gospel, Jesus says, "You say that I am, but I say to you, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of God and coming in the clouds." That's not the same answer. I was struck. I was troubled. This isn't the fact that these two eyewitnesses were getting the story wrong. These are two different answers. So then I looked up the same passage in the Gospel of Luke. And there they are, Caiaphas and Jesus in Luke's Gospel. "Are you the Messiah, the Son of God?" And Jesus gives relatively the same answer that he does in Matthew, except there's no "you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of God and coming in the clouds." Luke seems to dismiss that language. So then I thought to myself, oh my gosh, do I even dare reading this from the Gospel of John? I knew that John was completely different than Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So I looked it up, and Caiaphas and Jesus never speak. They don't have a conversation at all. What am I supposed to do with this? Why did no one tell me that the Gospels were different? At first, I was troubled, but then I kind of leaned into how the Gospels offer a particular nuance and a particular portrait of Jesus. Thinking about the diversity of the Gospels reminds me of the diversity of my own kids. They live in the same home, they have the same parents, they all go to the same church, and yet they all receive the world in very different and unique ways. They respond in the world in diverse and unique ways. My oldest is artistic and empathetic and feels emotions deeply and always fights for the underdog. My second daughter is yes ma'am, no ma'am, everything is black and white, and she's much more analytic than her older sister. My third daughter, it is her way or the highway. There's a right way to do it, and it's her way. It's her world. We're just all living in it. And then there's my son, who is kind of like the golden retriever of the family. Why have a bad time when you can have a good time? They all receive the world in a unique way, and the Gospels also present their perspective in a unique way. This is one of the things I love about being a United Methodist. The way that we read Scripture is unique and diverse. We read Scripture through lenses of tradition, reason, and experience. We read Scripture through tradition. Folks have thought about Scripture for thousands of years, and it's important to listen to what they have to say. But we don't stop there. We also read Scripture through the lens of reason. God gave us brains, and we are called to use it. We are to read Scripture also in conversation with biology and philosophy and archaeology, and all of these things can help us understand the context through which we know these stories. We also read Scripture through experience. And it's not my experience versus your experience. It is our experience together of how these Scriptures live on the street with people. When Jesus enters into the Garden of Gethsemane, this moment of prayer, this moment of desperation, this moment of seeking God's will, each gospel presents a different portrait of that passion, of that moment of suffering, of that moment of agony. With the Gospel of Mark, it's relatively short, and Jesus is to the point, and yet, there is this intimate connection with God. Jesus calls God Abba. And Mark's gospel is the only gospel that reports that. And then there's Matthew, where Jesus is a little more stoic, a little more formal, where Jesus is relatively okay with God's will. And then there's Luke. In the Garden of Gethsemane with Luke, Jesus is almost interrupted, and he's full of agony. He sweats blood, and angels attend to him. And there's this moment of desperate humanity. And then there's John. You're going to hear me several times say, and then there's John. And then there's John, where everything seems inevitable. Jesus is stoic. Jesus is in control. These different portraits of Jesus' last week, of Jesus' passion, asks us how we understand passion. Is it something that we approach with stoicism? Is it something that we approach with formality? Is it something that we agonize over? Now, having a passion isn't something that you really, really like. It's something that you would suffer for. It's something in which you understand joy. Now, joy is not a happy feeling. It's not a sad feeling. It's a feeling of assurance that God is with you. Sometimes that happens in the bloom of the rubble of life. What is your passion? What is something that you would willingly suffer for? I remember when I became a parent, my oldest, the one who's empathetic and loves the underdog, she never slept. She never slept at all. I remember the first time she slept through the night, she was born in June, and the first time she slept through the night was Christmas Eve. We called it the Christmas miracle. I remember when she was 3 months old, there was a stretch where she refused to sleep. So I would drive her up and down Uri Drive, which was the main drag of the city, at 3 o'clock in the morning. She and I, just driving. And eventually she would fall asleep. It was holy time. It was difficult time. But that's passion. It's something that you would suffer for because in the midst of it, you find joy. You find the assurance that God is with you. It's not happy. It's not sad. It is. And it's real. And it's probably the only thing we experience to be real. These diverse stories of the gospel, especially in the context of passion, help us understand that our passions are diverse as well. And in those passions, we discover joy. We discover what God is calling us to. We discover what we are called to do in the world. So what is your passion? Where do you find joy? Where do you find that place that is holy but also hard that you're called to accomplish? Thanks for joining me.